Hey everybody. So yesterday I said that I was going to do a video today about about remaining NHL free agents because Dan Hamhuis got signed yesterday. I was surprised it took him so long to get signed, um, and I want to look at some other guys who I don't think will remain on the market much longer, or will at least get a look in training camp. So I decided that I'm going to do a video on 10 players, 10 remaining free agents that I think will at least get a PTO and get a look in an NHL training camp, and many of these will probably end up on an NHL roster next year. Before we start the video, I just want to say, if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. As long as you're a fan of hockey and the NHL, there are videos here for you, so please subscribe. So, first up, this isn't in any particular order. These are just 10 guys that I think will at least get a look next season. Mark Letestu. Mark Letestu is 33 years old, but he has proven throughout his career that he can be a very valuable fourth liner, of guy who can play center, can also play wing. He's a very solid player, and I'm really surprised that a team hasn't picked him up yet, given how important depth is in the NHL. He can easily be your regular fourth-line center. He could also be an extra forward if you need him to. On a cheap contract, Mark Letestu is definitely a guy that still belongs in the NHL. Scott Hartnell. Scott Hartnell, in limited playing time, actually had a very good year last year with the Nashville Predators. He had 13 goals. He's 36 years old. He's definitely up there in age, but on a one-year cheap contract, there's no reason a team shouldn't take a chance on Hartnell. He's a fourth liner at this point, but he still has some offense in him, as he proved last year. He's a physical guy. He can still play. He played very, very well in the time that he got last season. I'm surprised that he's still on the market. I think any team looking for a solid fourth liner and a veteran presence to bring into the locker room, Hartnell would be a fantastic guy to add to pretty much any team. Luca Sbisa. Luca Sbisa played with Vegas last year. He was in and out of the lineup. He missed time with injuries. He's only 28 years old. He's somebody who isn't a great defenseman, but as a 6th or a 7th, I think he could definitely be a benefit to some teams in the league. And depth on the back end is so important, and as injuries start to pile up during the season, you got to be 7, 8, even 9 defensemen deep as an organization. Sbisa is a guy that should at least get a look and get a chance to earn a spot with a team this year. He's not the greatest defenseman, but he's certainly somebody that can be a valuable guy in a depth role. Alexei Emelin. Emelin is 32 years old. He played with the Nashville Predators last season. He was in the Predators lineup regularly. He played pretty well. He's not a guy who's going to give you any substantial offense from the back end, but he's a pretty good defenseman. And I'm very much like Dan Hamhuis. I'm very surprised that he hasn't been picked up yet. Out of all of these players, I think Emelin is probably the best one left on the market as far as what he can bring to a team. He can be an everyday bottom pair defenseman without a doubt, and I'm surprised that a team hasn't picked him up yet. I absolutely think that Emelin will be on an NHL roster next season. I just think it hasn't happened yet. Nick Shore, the youngest guy on the list, he's a borderline NHL forward, but I think he's somebody who's going to get a look just because he's so young. He's only 25. He's obviously a bottom 6 forward. He's somebody who's going to be a depth player. All of these players at this point, if you're left on the market this late into the offseason, you're going to be a depth player. But again, these are guys who I think should at least get a look, get a PTO, and get into an NHL training camp, and maybe earn a spot with that team or another team who watches you in the preseason. So Shore's one of those guys for sure. He might snag an NHL spot. Maybe even a two-way contract where they can move him back and forth between the NHL and the AHL. Daniel Winnick. Winnick played last year in Minnesota. He actually had a very good year. He's 33 years old. He's a veteran guy. He's been around the league for quite a while, and he's played for a lot of different teams. But he's a very, very solid fourth liner. I think Winnick is definitely going to be on a roster next year. He just can add so much from a fourth line spot. He can be physical. He can kill penalties. He adds a little bit of offense, especially pretty good offensively for a fourth liner. It's not like he's 37 or 38 yet. He's only 33. I think he deserves a chance to make a roster, and I think he probably will. Chris Stewart, man, has he fallen over the last few years from where he was, say 5 years ago. Chris Stewart is somebody who is not getting talked about a lot, and I'm a little surprised by that because I still think he can be valuable to an NHL team. He's only 30 years old. The offense is for the most part gone. I think he had 10 goals last year, but he is not the 20 to 25 goal scorer that he used to be. But the offense is gone, but he still can be valuable as a fourth-line winger. He's a really big body, 240 pounds. He can fight. He's physical. He hits. I'm very surprised that the team hasn't brought Stewart in yet to be a fourth-line grinder type player. He's not going to be, getting a big contract. He's probably going to be making under $1 million a year. But on a 1 or 2 year deal for, 700,000 or 800K, something like that, why not bring him in? I think he can still be a valuable player in a fourth line grinder role. The offense isn't there anymore, but he's still got other ways he can contribute to an NHL team, and I think he'll at least get a look this preseason. Tommy Wingels, another 30-year-old, again, fourth line guy, but he can be very valuable. I think, once he got traded to the Bruins at the end of last season at the trade deadline, I think he played fairly well for the Bruins and was a valuable piece for them as a fourth liner. He's a lot like Mark Letestu, and I think he can be a very valuable fourth line guy. And if he doesn't crack the everyday lineup, he can absolutely be a 13th or 14th forward and an extra guy who can come in when someone gets injured and needs someone else in the lineup for them. I would be very surprised to see Tommy Wingels not in the NHL in any capacity next year. I think he should at least get a contract as an extra forward. Similar to him is Scotty Upshaw. Upshaw's played the last few years with the Blues, and he's been a decent fourth-line guy. He's kind of reinvented himself to be that fourth-line grinder type. He was more of a skill guy when he came into the league. Was a pretty good offensive player. The offense isn't there anymore, really. He's 34 years old, but he's done a decent job of keeping himself in the NHL, and he's really grown into that role of being a fourth-line guy who gets in on the forecheck and hits. And, he can still give you a little bit of offense. And I think he at least gets a PTO and gets a look from somebody around the league. Whether or not he gets a contract, we'll have to see, but he should at least get a look. And lastly, defenseman Toby Enstrom. Enstrom, not too long ago was a top 4 defenseman and a pretty good one. Injuries have taken their toll. He really didn't play much at all last year. But he's only 33 years old, so I think he still could be a 6th or 7th guy on, somewhere for at least a couple more years in the league. I don't think he's ready to be done yet. And, on a cheap 1-year contract, why not take a chance and bring him in as a 7th defenseman? And I think he could be a valuable piece there. Every team deals with injuries throughout the year. Depth is extremely important on both forward and on defense. And I think Enstrom he's too good of a player to not get at least a PTO this off season and get at least into a training camp and see what he still can do. I would be surprised if nobody wants him at all. So those are 10 guys that I think will at least get a PTO for the preseason and a look. Some of them I definitely think deserve and will come out of that with contracts. Some of them might get contracts without even having to do a PTO, just they're going to sign when it gets closer to the start of the season. I think there are some players on that list that can be very valuable to a team next season, and all of them at least deserve a look. Whether or not they get a contract depends on how they play in the preseason, but I think they should at least get the chance to show what they can still do, because there are certainly some very solid depth players on that list. So those are my 10 players who are still UFAs who I think at least deserve a PTO or a contract. So thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.